Colorado's Jewish community stands tall in the face of terror and hate. Tonight, as the firebombing suspect comes to court, a rabbi to 6 of the victims talks about his community's solidarity and its overwhelming grief.
It's horrific. Like the worst nightmare.
After years of growing anti-Semitism here, we hear from Coloradans who saw this violence as inevitable.
We're not surprised as a community, and we are just going to get through it.
The rush by some elected leaders in our state to politicize the attack.
Shame on you! You're not Jewish, you're a Democrat!
And I'll have a word about the un-American cowardice on display and how we'll rise above it. Tonight on Next.
Prosecutors are going to try to put the Boulder firebombing suspect away for life. Court documents show the suspect said that he wanted to kill Zionists, and he decided to use fire as his weapon when he learned he couldn't legally buy a gun because he was in this country without authorization. Mohammed Suleiman came to court for the first time today with what appeared to be a bandage around his head. He's facing 16 counts of attempted murder from local prosecutors and a simultaneous hate crime charge from federal prosecutors.
He was interviewed about the attack. He said he wanted them all to die. He had no regrets, and he would go back and do it again.
Homeland Security says Suleiman was in the country illegally, having overstayed a visa, an expired work permit as well. That alone would not have made him a priority for deportation. And the FBI confirmed today that he was not on their radar before this attack. He's being held on a $10 million cash-only bond. 2 of the 16 people injured in that attack are still in the hospital. Our Mark Salinger has learned that 6 of the victims are members of one Jewish congregation in Boulder. And Mark, you spoke with the rabbi.
Yeah, Kyle, the person who was most seriously injured in this attack came to the weekly march on Sunday for the first time this week. They were there to raise support for Israeli hostages still in Gaza. That person is still in the hospital this evening as a congregation that describes itself as a family remains in shock.
Our congregation is called Congregation Bonei Shalom, and Bonei Shalom means builders of peace.
In a space built on unity, peace was ruptured inside this congregation.
It's just shattering that, some of that dream has been smashed in this horrific attack.
Mark Soloway has been the rabbi here for 20 years.
Like the worst nightmare,
6 of the people who were badly burned on Pearl Street are part of the congregation.
And they were violently and brutally attacked by fire. And it's like brings up horrific images of our past. Just the idea of someone who's literally got their body on fire in the middle of the mall in Boulder, Colorado. It just defies belief.
The march on Sunday raised awareness for Israeli hostages. The group wanted peace. Today, the rabbi spoke of unity in the face of an anti-Semitic terror attack.
You can feel incredibly sad, you can feel angry, you can feel a whole range of emotions. And the most important thing is we're here together. We've got each other's backs. We're taking care of each other.
I think it's hard for any community member right now in Boulder to answer the question of whether they feel safe.
Across the street at the Jewish Community Center, Jonathan Lev knows that safety goes beyond having a guard at the door.
Safety is actually both physical, but it's also emotional. And right now, I think emotionally it's almost impossible to feel safe.
He says this was an attack on the entire Jewish community.
What we're seeing here is increased violence connected to rhetoric that is dangerous. And it's filled with hate and anti-Semitism.
It is just inconceivable that Jewish people in the United States of America in 2025 can feel so unsafe right now.
In a space built on peace, terror brings so much pain.
We're like a big family, so we're all just feeling broken and angry and grieving and sad and hopeless, and it's hard to know where to direct the anger to, but it's a lot. There's a lot of emotion.
Many more members of the congregation were also at the walk yesterday and saw everything happen. They rushed over with water to put out the flames of the people who'd been set on fire. In the hours since that attack, the 24 hours since that attack, they've seen an outpouring of support from people of all religions that they say has helped them get through this. Kyle?
Mark, you hear the rabbi talk about that feeling of hopelessness, and certainly embedded in that has to be the knowledge that the hate that led to this attack is still very much out there embedded in the community.
Yeah, there's several hundred people at this congregation, and we've seen increased security from people like the Boulder Police Department and state troopers trying to make sure that everybody is safe. Across the street from me right now is the Jewish Community Center here in Boulder. We saw an extra security guard out there today. Again, everybody on edge here, just trying to feel safe after such an awful attack yesterday.
Mark Salinger reporting from Boulder. Thank you, Mark. Colorado's elected leaders are responding to the terror attack in Boulder, with leading Democrats condemning anti-Semitic hate and violence and leading Republicans condemning Democrats.
Attack on any of us is an attack on all of us. It goes for Jews, Muslims, Christians, people of no faith at all. There's just no room in our state for these acts of terror. Democratic Governor Jared Polis immediately called the attack terrorism. Democratic Attorney General Phil Weiser condemned the firebombing as anti-Semitism and bigotry. Democratic Senator Michael Bennet called the attack horrific, said the country must defeat the hatred of anti-Semitism. Republican Congresswoman Lauren Boebert blamed Democrats, posting, quote, "When progressives allow and encourage hate speech toward Jews for their mere existence, people get hurt." Republican Congressman Gabe Evans also blamed Democrats, saying the terror attack was, quote, "a direct result of failed sanctuary states like Colorado." Conservative Aurora City Councilwoman Danielle Jurinsky, who is Jewish herself, went on a tirade today against Colorado's top Democrats, saying that they're not actually Jewish and calling the Democratic Party a demonic cult.
Shame on Jared Polis, Jenna Griswold, Michael Bennet, Phil Weiser. Shame on every single one of you who have made the Democratic Party your religion. Shame on you. You're not Jewish. You're a Democrat. Nothing brings me to tears like this than watching Jews put their dedication to a demonic cult, the Democratic Party, which has made crime legal, murder legal, rape legal. You had better be on your knees praying to God for forgiveness for your behavior, because you're not just anti-American, you yourselves are anti-Semitic.
Perhaps this goes without saying, but Councilwoman Jurinsky's claim that Democrats have made crime, including murder and rape, legal is false. We have been reporting on the rise in anti-Semitism in Colorado now for years. Half-century high in recorded anti-Semitic incidents, neo-Nazis taking over remote public comment sessions at city council meetings. Our Angeline McCall spoke with members of the Jewish community who talked about balancing their shock today with the feeling that this was inevitable.
What's hard to process is that hate turned them into a target.
I never thought this would ever happen.
Ed Victor was marching in the group Sunday when investigators say a man threw Molotov cocktails and gasoline, burning and injuring 12 people.
Everybody get back, everybody get back. I'm pretty sure I heard a crash, but it was a heat, flame, looked and saw someone on fire. And then it was just like, what do we gotta do to put this fire out on this person?
Investigators say the man planned the attack for a year. During the same time, members of the Jewish community sensed a change.
The anger and vitriol has increased, not decreased.
Boulder City Councilwoman Tara Weiner says she's been subjected to anti-Semitic rants at meetings and during open comment.
When you have the violent rhetoric, the screaming, the yelling, and the cursing, you know that it's one step away from somebody running up to the podium and hurting you or hurting other Jewish people.
She knows 3 victims personally, including a woman who is a Holocaust survivor.
The phrase that we use, never again, for the Holocaust, but then I would say not again when I heard this. So I went from never again to not again. Brought back a lot of bad memories of history.
He's right there, he's on the ground right there.
But on Sunday, we know someone acted on the hate, turning her fear into a reality she hoped she wouldn't have to endure again.
And I believe that this city is going to get through this together.
What I'm grateful for is my Jewish community and my greater community reaching out.
Councilwoman Weiner says that
People will say anti-Semitic things to her and then say, well, no, what I said wasn't anti-Semitic. She believes very strongly that the Jewish community should decide what is anti-Semitic to them versus what is not. She also said that when people say things like, I hate Israel, well, it's not all that far of a jump to say, I hate Jews. And she says that that jump is dangerous. Kyle?
All right, Angeline McCall reporting for us from Boulder. You know, a moment ago I said 16 injured. Investigators said the update today was 12 injured in this attack. Angeline McCall, thank you very much. Responding to speech with violence is cowardly and it's un-American. The terror attack on the Jewish community in Boulder was both. Firebombing old ladies was also an act of anti-Semitic hate, one of the oldest forms of hate in human history. After this many centuries of it, there's no excuse not to identify it and call it by name. The latest target was a group, including a lot of older folks, who came together each week to remember the hostages held by Hamas, a peaceful gathering to draw the community's attention. They weren't protesting, they weren't picketing, but even if they were, they would not have been deserving of violence in response to their words. That's not how America is supposed to work. It's one of the things that makes this country a beacon, attracting people from less free places. And for those who come here from the world over, that's a non-negotiable. You don't get to come to America and meet speech you don't like with violence. Following the attack in Boulder, we've heard calls for a crackdown on speech that criticizes the government of Israel, suggesting that's somehow an automatic precursor to hate and violence. No. That's also cowardly and un-American. Instead, the worst moments should invite us to respond with the best of this country, a place where speech should be protected and political violence should not be tolerated. Each week, no matter how difficult the news, your generosity never fails to remind us of the good that exists in Colorado. Your latest Word of Thanks weekly microgiving campaign raised nearly $40,000 for Aurora Interfaith's food pantry. This week marks 5 years of your giving that has transformed nonprofits in every corner of Colorado. So tell me about a wonderful organization doing good in your community. Perhaps we can help them as well. Email next@9news.com or text next at 303-871-1491. Mike Lindell's trial begins in Denver today with some pillow talk before the trial turned to claims of election rigging. And every dollar being spent by Denver these days is under a microscope with a budget deficit. Now the city's considering hundreds of millions of dollars for the National Western Center. That's next.
A busy weather night. We're tracking a storm system to the south that will interact with a cold front coming in from the north. Severe thunderstorms already developing out on the eastern plains, and the Front Range foothills bracing for heavy rain overnight. In spite of the cloud cover, temperatures in the 70s and 80s today. We'd cool back a little bit, but the severe thunderstorm watch will be extended out for at least until 8 o'clock, 9 o'clock for southern Colorado. This cell in Weld County is dropping 1-inch diameter hail. It is tracking toward the north and east outside of Raymer. We do have concerns for flooding in and around the Grand Lake area and up in Larimer County from slow-moving storms. The next wave of showers coming into Denver from the south, and the severe thunderstorms in southeastern Colorado now moving into Kansas and Oklahoma. We are tracking the potential for heavy rainfall overnight. Many areas could see a 1/2 inch to 1 inch of rain ending mid-morning tomorrow. And so an active evening of weather and a lot of water coming into the Front Range overnight tonight. Pack the rain gear if you're headed out, and tomorrow we're not looking at a severe weather threat, but a chance of thunderstorms through Thursday with a warming and drying trend just in time for the weekend.
A federal defamation case in Denver is about to test the claims that Dominion voting systems based here rigged the 2020 election. First, though, a judge had to find 8 Coloradans who can give My Pillow guy Mike Lindell a fair trial. Our Marshall Zellinger is down at the downtown courthouse, federal court, covering this trial, focused on whether the claims made by Lindell and echoed by President Donald Trump are true. And Marshall, tell us how they vetted jurors for this highly watched trial.
The jurors were asked about their social media habits. They were asked how they get news, and it was kind of depressing to hear. A lot of them said they don't, or they get the headlines from a friend, family member, or a coworker. They were also asked their opinions of Mike Lindell, President Trump, and January 6th. 20 jurors were ultimately excused after being questioned. But the day was spent narrowing the jury down to 8. One juror who was dismissed said they could not be impartial because they found Lindell's political activities offensive. Another dismissed juror said that they had a positive opinion because their whole family has MyPillows. One juror who was picked had this exchange with one of the attorneys. The attorney asked, "Do you consider the January 6ers patriots?" The juror said, "Sure." "Well, why?" "Because they were doing something they stood up for." "Explain your First Amendment philosophy," the attorney asked. "Freedom of speech," said the juror. "Do you think there are limits?" And then the juror said, "I do think there are limits, anything involving treason." That juror is one of 5 men and 3 women ultimately serving on this jury. Like a moth to a flame, after court, Lindell found our camera, and after telling me I have a smug look on my face, he told me why this defamation case has no merit.
This 2020 election, I never say anything about Coomer, didn't know Joe Altman or Coomer. So this is why this is the most frivolous case that ever walked the planet Earth.
Joe Altman is the Douglas County conservative activist who said he was on an Antifa phone call where he overheard Coomer claim to have rigged the 2020 election. He's under subpoena now to show up here in federal court tomorrow. It was an interesting morning for Mike Lindell, Kyle. Court started at 8:36 and Lindell was still out here talking to the news media and the cameras that were here. The judge wanted to know if he was going to show up in court. His lawyer said, well, let us text him and get him in here. The judge took a recess, and as she stood up to leave, everybody else stood up, and that's the moment Lindell walked through the back doors, making it seem like he was arriving to court to an ovation.
Oh, I'm sure he loved that. This is an interesting defense, Marshall. I didn't know the guy I'm accused of defaming. I am not a lawologist, but I was not aware that that is one of the prongs that you have to satisfy for a defamation case, right? For a defamation, right, you have to say something false about somebody. You have to broadcast it. It has to do damage to the person. You have to explicitly name them. I don't think one of the prongs is like, do you know the dude?
I simply asked that question when he came over to the camera. It sounds like that's one of your defenses. Why do you think the defense for defamation is I didn't know him? I heard like a 5 to 8 minute answer that really didn't address that, Kyle, other than he says he didn't talk about Coomer. And when I asked him, did you give a platform to amplify claims about Coomer rigging the 2020 election, he kind of diverted in his answer also.
Marshall Zellinger with 2 weeks of what is either the best or the worst assignment of all time. Day one's in the books. Thank you, Marshall. A new equestrian center, hotel, housing. The National Western needs a lot of money from the city if they're going to make this happen. A lot of folks writing in tonight with similar thoughts around our airing of comments by Aurora City Councilwoman Danielle Jurinsky, in which she was screaming about how she doesn't believe Colorado's top Democrats are really Jewish. L.T., Carol, Sharon, Stephen wrote in to say specifically, why did you air irresponsible comments? To all those folks, I would just say, you should know what elected officials in Colorado are saying, and you should see how elected officials in Colorado conduct themselves. Maggie wrote in tonight to say your commentary tonight was well stated. She simply writes, I want a kind and gentle America too. And I would add, one that lives up to its values.